And joining us on the line, we have the legendary Jordan Maxwell. He is a veteran researcher with almost 50 years experience under his belt. He's a former radio show host. He's an author, a speaker, and I think he's the one that originated the slideshow presentation back in the early 60s. So it's really an honor to have him on the show. He's a big influence to people like David Icke, Michael Sarian, Zechariah Sitchin, Richard Hoagland, and I mean, the list goes on and on. So Jordan, it's really an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you. It's a strange world we live in, yeah, and it's true that I've worked with many of the names that you mentioned, and I've been in business with Zechariah Sitchin and Richard Hoagland and all kinds of interesting people over the years. And it was only until about 1989 to 90 I decided to go public myself. I had been doing lectures since 1962. But they were always private stuff, and I started out, of course, in little mom-and-pop bookstores and library rooms, and just speaking to audiences, just because I love doing that. I love talking about things that most people don't even know exist. And so I have been able to be in the company of extraordinary people for many, many years and learn a lot from everyone, and I'm still learning today. That's why I always like to say that I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. I'm just an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of things out there in the world that people just do not know. That's been out there for a long time. You could find it yourself, but it's so well hidden, and you have to be in the right company at the right time to hear about things which most people are never going to be privy to know about. And I've been fortunate to be in that company, and so that's why I love doing what I do, as difficult as it has been on me. But it's a give and take in the universe. You get what you pay for, and so I've always felt that sacrifice is the measure of credibility. Well, if you want this kind of knowledge that I deal with, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you a lot. It's cost me my marriage. It's cost me my family. Has cost me, some really tragic things in my life because of what I do, along with being threatened and that kind of stuff comes with it. But on the other hand, the kind of knowledge which I've been given and being able to be in the company of to learn is so extraordinary and so profound that I understand why. Why it costs so much to learn these things. So I'm always happy to be on a radio show that I can share a little bit of what I've been doing.
Absolutely. We get attacked very frequently. As a matter of fact, we were just assaulted by a fundamentalist Christian, verbally assaulted. We were called Satanists because our show delves in the occult. And when we explained to her, well, occult means hidden, she turned around and said, well, it's hidden Satanism.
Right.
How would you describe the occult?
Occult is a Latin word which is used in the medical industry. Doctors know the word well. Ask any doctor, what does the word occult mean in the medical profession? And they will tell you that there are certain organs in the body which are referred to in their terms as occult organs, because you have to go in when you're cutting, you have to remove something to get to something which is hidden. And so they're referred to as occult organs. And so occult simply means something which is hidden. Well, anyone who's got more than 500 brain cells all going in the same direction should know that the power elites of this world, as far back as 6,000 to 10,000 years, have always felt that important knowledge is on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. Like George Carlin says, there's a big club and you ain't in it. But the people who run the planet have things like CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, NSA, National Security Administration, all great corporations, big corporations and big government require as part of their operation, require knowledge, information, intelligence. They pay big money for informers and intelligence. So knowledge is power. And the church is one of the oldest beholders of occult knowledge, hidden wisdom. And it was always placed in the hands of the priests, because even during the Middle Ages, during the early Middle Ages, as far back as the 4th and 5th century, the people, generally speaking, couldn't read or write. It was only the priests in the churches who were taught how to read and write. And so they developed what we today refer to as languages, because they were communicating among themselves and writing it down. And so today we are now finally evolved enough that we can actually start educating the normal person in the street to read. But and so unhappily, all they read is the sports page. But at least during the Middle Ages and in the medieval times, and even before that, the people could not read or write. All they could do is go out and work the land for their masters who owned them and the land they were living on. And it was only until the coming of the Renaissance that we, in about the 1500s, when we began to get the idea that maybe it would be better if the whole world could read and communicate with each other. So that's where the printing press comes in, and schools now are, everywhere. And so I've watched the evolution of the human race over the centuries in history, and I'm afraid that we are digressing now. We started off with a good idea in the U.S. of A. With educating the people, but today, of course, like the Christians say, we did not evolve from chimps and monkeys. I agree. The real case is what we're evolving into chimps and monkeys, because nobody seems to read or care anymore.
It seems like we're devolving.
Say it again?
It seems like we're devolving. We evolved,
now
we're devolving.
Yeah, that's what I said. We are evolving into chimps. We're evolving into monkeys, not from them. And so, when you start breaking down the words and terms that are used in theology and religion, oh, man, what a story that is. I mean, when people talk about the devil, the word devil is simply a D, the letter D in front of the word evil. You write evil and then put a D in front because devil. God, our word God, can be traced back to, in the dictionaries, God in Latin is Dios, Dios, and Dios goes directly back in Latin to the god Zeus. So Zeus in Latin is Deus, and Deus in English is God. So when Christians are talking about God, they're talking about Zeus. And so, the very word God also comes from the root word that gives us our word good. So you take an O out of good, it becomes God. Obviously, God is good. And devil is a D in front of evil. It's just word play. And unfortunately, a little bit of information is very dangerous. So we've taught people to learn to read, but they only read a little bit. They're not too interested in real, legitimate study, like an academician. They are just read a little something, hear a little something, and before you know it, they pass it on to their children pass it on to their children, and today we have a world filled with ignorant, ill-informed, unread, dim-witted people who think that they have the whole truth and nothing but the truth, in point of fact, have no truth whatsoever. And when you really get into theology, and that's my subject, I talk a lot about the political systems, and I'm trying to get away from that because I've been talking about that for 48 years. But when you get into theology and religion, that is where the real story is. That's where the real stuff is. Because our words and terms that we use today in everyday life come directly out of the church. I mean, you've got to remember that Rome has dominated Europe for at least 2,700 years with the coming of the Caesars of Rome and the ancient Roman Empire, and then in the 5th century when it began to crumble, and in its place the Vatican came up. The people who were financing the Roman Empire began to pull the money out of Rome because they saw it was going under, and began a new operation called the Vatican. And and so that whole Roman system is still with us today, all over the world. Rome still controls Europe, and Europe still dominates the world, the planet. And so we've got 2,700 years of the church keeping secrets. That's why they have enclaves and secret meetings and secret societies. It's in motion pictures. It's in television shows. Everybody knows that. I mean, we're not privy to know what goes on, but like in the